The city of Aurum was said to be eternal. From the wastelands beyond the Iron Mountains, travelers could already see its light, a trembling haze of gold against the dark horizon. They said it never dimmed, even through the smoke of 1,000 chimneys. The glow was constant, serene, almost holy. Aurum was not built by kings nor by priests, but by engineers. Their monuments were not cathedrals, but engines. Their prayers, calculations. Every tower that touched the clouds was a furnace, every bridge a conduit for steam. Beneath its gilded streets, rivers of molten brass flowed through pipes as thick as trees, humming with the breath of machines. The people called it the heart of God, the great engine beneath the city. They believed it had been discovered, not made, a divine relic found deep beneath the earth, still alive, still pulsing. No one knew who first found it or when, but the heart became the city's center, and soon its God. Generations rose and died under its light, and with every century, the city built higher towers, stronger engines, and deeper faith. The heart gave them heat, it gave them power, it gave them everything but rest. On the surface, Aurum shone like paradise, but under its skin, in the dark chambers where the pipes ran like veins, the air trembled with a low, endless hum. Some said it was the god breathing, others said it was the sound of the world decaying. No one questioned it, no one dared. On the eastern edge of the city stood the Academy of Mechanics, a fortress of glass and steel. It was there that the next generation of engineers was trained, children chosen by the guild to maintain the god's body. Among them was a young man named Elias. He was quiet, careful, and endlessly curious. One of the few who still asked why. While others prayed to the heart, Elias studied its blueprints, trying to understand what it truly was. His mentors warned him not to dig too deep. The heart does not reveal itself to questions, they said, only to faith. But faith was not enough for Elias. He wanted to see what lay beneath. One night, long after the city's bells had silenced and the towers had stopped glowing, Elias stayed in the archives. The candles had melted down to glass puddles. The ink on his fingers had turned black as soot. He traced the lines of an old schematic, a forbidden one drawn centuries before. It showed the city's first design, pipes connecting every district to a single core chamber. The label read, Ventriculus Dei, the stomach of God. Elias frowned. He had seen that name only once before, in an old hymn sung during the Festival of Ascension. The lyrics spoke of a God that feeds upon the chosen and burns with eternal mercy. He felt a chill. From the window of the archive, he could see the glow of the city's central spire, a column of light piercing the clouds. Its reflection shimmered across the brass rooftops like liquid gold. It was beautiful, and somehow wrong. "What do you feed on?" he whispered. The pipes above his head answered with a deep metallic sigh, as if exhaling in reply. At dawn, the city woke in rhythm. Bells rang from the upper towers. Steam hissed from vents across the streets. The smell of oil and ozone filled the air. Workers in bronze uniforms marched toward the factories, their boots echoing on the metal pavement. The sound was like the ticking of a colossal clock, the heartbeat of a civilization that refused to sleep. In the Grand Plaza, hundreds gathered to kneel before the Spire of Light, the sacred monument above the heart's chamber. The priests of the guild stood on raised platforms, their robes trimmed with copper. They raised their arms and intoned the morning chant, "May the heart never stop." The crowd repeated it, thousands of voices merging into one trembling prayer. From the balcony of the academy, Elias watched them. He saw their faces glow in the golden light, eyes filled not with joy, but with something deeper. obedience, fear. He turned away. Down below, the city stretched into endless haze, its lower district cloaked in shadow. The air there was thicker, the light dimmer, the people smaller. Yet all of them worked to feed the same machine. Somewhere in the maze of gears and tunnels, the god waited, unseen, untouchable. That night, Elias descended into the lower sectors. The streets were narrow, carved between colossal ducts that leak thin streams of vapor. Lamps burned dim through the mist, their light tinted gold. He passed workers with hollow eyes, their faces lined with soot. Children played with scraps of copper instead of toys. The heart provides, they murmured whenever a pipe hissed above them. Elias followed the sound deeper, past the abandoned mills, past the locked gates marked authorized personnel only. His footsteps echoed through the damp tunnels. The air grew warmer, then hot. He could feel the vibration through the soles of his boots, the heartbeat of the god. And then he saw it, a door, circular, carved from pure brass, sealed with hundreds of bolts. Around its frame, ancient inscriptions shimmered faintly in the glow of his lantern. The heart must never rest. Elias stood before it, breath unsteady. He placed his palm on the metal. It pulsed beneath his skin, alive. Behind that door, he knew, lay the truth of Aurum, the engine that never stopped, the god that never slept. Elias did not yet know it, but this touch, this single moment of defiance, would be remembered as the first crack in eternity. For in the city of gold, nothing truly shone. Even light could rot. Morning came with the sound of metal. The city never truly slept. It merely dimmed its lights, softened its rhythm. But when dawn arrived, the pulse quickened again. Hammers rose, pistons clattered, steam howled through every street. Aurum was waking, and the heart was hungry. In the upper district, the air was clearer, perfumed with hot oil and iron dust. The towers shone like spears of sunlight stabbing the clouds. From one of them, the Hall of Engineers, came a single rhythmic toll. Elias stood among dozens of apprentices, all dressed in the copper gray of the guild. The hall smelled of grease and incense. The combination was sacred, almost divine. The grand mechanist appeared upon the dais, draped in robes woven with wires of gold. His face was hidden behind a mask of polished brass, a tradition said to shield men from the gaze of the god. Brothers and sisters of the Mechanist Guild, the voice echoed, metallic, amplified by hidden speakers. Today, we honor those chosen by the heart itself. The hall fell silent. The core maintenance division requires a new hand, one who is skilled, obedient, and pure of faith. The Mechanist's eyes, or where eyes should have been, turned toward Elias. Elias Roan. The sound of his name echoed through the chamber like a verdict. You have been chosen. The apprentices turned, whispering. To be assigned to the core division was the highest honor and the deepest risk. Few returned unchanged. Elias bowed, as was expected, though his stomach nodded. He had touched the sealed door only nights ago. Had someone seen him? Or had the heart itself known? The Mechanist's voice softened. You will report to sub-level 39 at dusk. Prepare yourself, child of the heart. For you walk where gods still dream. The bell tolled again, and the congregation bowed as one. That evening, Elias descended by the elevator of chains, a vast platform sinking through layers of the city. Each level they passed revealed another world. Above, towers glittered with golden smoke. Below, the light dimmed into copper shadows. Around him stood 6 other engineers, silent behind their brass masks. The air grew thicker as they went down, the scent of rust and heat clinging to every breath. One of them, a woman whose mask bore the mark of senior rank, spoke at last. "First time?" Elias nodded. "Remember this, boy," she said, her voice dry as steam. "Down here we serve the heart, not the council, not the guild, the heart alone." The platform shuddered, chains groaning. "And if it speaks to you," she added quietly, "do not answer." Sub-level 39 was not a place for men. It was a cathedral of heat and pressure, an endless maze of pipes, turbines, and molten conduits that throbbed like arteries. The walls sweated with condensation. The air trembled with the heart's pulse. Elias followed his group through narrow walkways suspended above glowing vents. Steam hissed beneath their boots like whispers. Everywhere, symbols of the guild were carved into the metal. Spirals, circles, eyes without pupils. "Here," said the senior engineer, pointing to a leaking valve. "Routine inspection. Measure the flow. Seal the breach." Elias knelt, adjusting his goggles. The pipe vibrated with immense power, a constant hum that pressed into his bones. He placed his hand upon it. For a second, he heard it again. A voice, not mechanical, not noise, but something human, buried beneath the rhythm of the machine. "Help me." The sound was faint, like a sigh trapped inside metal. Elias froze. He looked around. No one else reacted. The others worked, unfazed, as if deaf. The whisper came again. "They are still burning." Elias stumbled back. His tools clattered to the floor. "Problem?" asked the senior engineer. I thought I heard." She looked at him sharply. "You heard nothing?" "But the heart speaks in echoes," she said. "It tests us. Do not listen, or it will take your voice in return." Her gaze lingered a moment longer before she turned away. Seal the valve. Hours passed. The work was endless. Every bolt they tightened seemed to loosen somewhere else. The heart never rested, and neither did its servants. By midnight, Elias found himself alone in a maintenance corridor, a narrow passage where the air shimmered with heat. The voice returned, louder. "Why do you feed it?" Elias spun, lantern raised. Only steam answered, curling from the vents like breath from invisible mouths. "We were promised light," the whisper said, breaking, trembling. "We gave our flesh, our breath, our dreams." The lantern flickered. For a heartbeat, he saw shapes in the mist, faces, faint and pale, pressed against the pipes as though trapped behind glass. Then darkness. A sudden silence fell, heavy, absolute. The hum of the heart stopped. Every worker in the corridor froze. The absence of sound was worse than noise. "Power fluctuation," someone shouted. "Stabilize the core." Lights flickered red. Steam burst from the walls. The pipes began to tremble violently, shaking the walkway beneath them. Elias ran, up the metal stairs through the choking haze. Above him, warning bells screamed, and through it all, beneath the roar of failing machinery, he heard it one last time. Find the heart. Find what we became. When the system stabilized again, the other engineers spoke in hushed tones. None mentioned the voices. But that night, as Elias looked out over the glowing spires of Aurum, one thought consumed him. If the god was alive, what did it eat to stay that way? The next morning, Aurum glowed brighter than ever. The great spire burned like a sun above the city, and the streets shimmered with liquid light. To the people, it was a blessing, proof that the heart had survived the night. But to Elias, the radiance felt wrong. It pulsed too fast, too strong, like a fever. The guild reported nothing unusual. Minor power fluctuation, they said, stabilized within acceptable parameters. But Elias knew what he'd heard. The voices, the silence, the tremor that had felt almost alive. He couldn't let it go. He spent the day reviewing maintenance logs in the archive. Every page he turned revealed the same pattern. Small blackouts, brief surges of energy, all dismissed as system breath. Yet the incidents were growing closer together, and all of them originated from the same sector. Sub-level 41, 2 layers beneath where he'd worked the night before. According to the records, that level had been sealed decades ago after a containment accident. No details, no survivors. Elias traced his finger across the schematic. A labyrinth of pipes leading to a central node labeled only as Ventriculus Node 3. The stomach of God, he thought again. That night he returned to the lower levels. The guards at the descent platforms barely looked at him. An engineer's uniform and forged assignment papers were enough. The air grew heavier as he descended, hotter, thicker, metallic. The smell of burnt oil mixed with something else, something faintly organic. Sub-level 41 was not on the official map. When the elevator stopped, there were no lights, no markings, just darkness and the distant rhythmic drip of condensation. He lit his lantern. The corridor before him was narrow, the walls slick with rust. The pipes were different here. Older, curved, ribbed like bones. Strange symbols were etched into the metal, worn by time. As he walked, he noticed the sound again. Not the hum of machinery, but something slower, like a heartbeat echoing through water. The passage widened into a maintenance chamber filled with dust and cobwebs of wire. A row of shattered glass tubes lined the walls. Inside some, shapes floated. Blackened, shapeless things that might once have been human. Elias stepped closer, breath caught. One of the tubes still held a faint glow. Within it, something moved. A human arm, pale, slender, suspended in thick amber fluid. Wires pierced the flesh, connecting it to the pipe behind the wall. The veins beneath the skin pulsed in rhythm with the machine. Elias stumbled back, bile rising in his throat. "No," he whispered. "It can't be." The hum deepened. The lantern flickered. A whisper crawled through the pipes, soft, pleading. "Do you see us now?" He dropped the lantern. It hit the floor with a metallic clang, and the shadows came alive. Faces shimmered across the walls. Hundreds of them, faint outlines pressed against the metal, eyes hollow and mouths open in silent scream. "We built the god. Now we are the god." Elias ran. The tunnels twisted, the heat rising like breath. Steam burst from the floor, searing his skin. The walls seemed to close in, pipes pulsing as though veins filled with molten blood. The voices followed him, overlapping, breaking apart. Whispers, cries, prayers. He feeds. He must feed, or the light dies. "Let us sleep." He burst through a sealed gate into an open chamber. Vast, circular, its center dominated by a colossal organ of brass and flesh. Tubes of copper disappeared into its surface, and within its translucent walls something glowed red and alive. It was beating. The heart. Not a machine. Not entirely. A living engine. Veins of metal, bones of steel, tissue glowing like molten gold. Elias stared, trembling. Every breath came with the taste of iron and ash. Now he understood the constant hunger, the endless heat, the whispering prayers. The machine wasn't powered by steam. It was powered by life. Every surge of energy, every flicker of light in the towers above, all of it drawn from the bodies of those who had ascended. Their souls were the fuel, their faith the chain. As Elias watched, a figure emerged from the shadows, tall, cloaked, wearing a mask of tarnished gold. "You shouldn't be here," the voice said, calm but hollow. "What is this?" Elias demanded. "What have you done?" "We did nothing," the figure replied. "We merely obeyed." "Obeyed what?" The mask tilted. "The law of creation. The heart must live. The god must burn." "This isn't a god," Elias said, voice shaking. "It's a corpse." "Perhaps," the figure murmured, "but it is our corpse. And as long as it breathes, the city will never die." The figure turned away. "Leave, Elias Roan. Forget what you saw. The light is mercy. The truth is ruin." Elias hesitated, then ran. He didn't stop until the glow of the upper city filled his eyes again. Yet even there, beneath the warm light of the spires, the truth followed him, a rhythm beneath his skin, echoing with every heartbeat. For the first time in his life, Elias realized he could no longer tell whether the sound he heard was his own pulse or the gods. In the days that followed, Elias tried to live as though nothing had changed. He reported for duty. He smiled at his peers. He recalibrated the minor turbines that fed the spire's lower grid. But beneath the hum of every engine, he could hear it. The rhythm, the heartbeat. It wasn't constant anymore. It matched his own. Every time his pulse quickened, the city's light flickered in sync. Every time he tried to sleep, the golden glow behind his eyelids beat back at him like a living thing. He stopped sleeping. The world began to lose its edges. Voices drifted through the pipes, faint, almost words like air leaking through cracks. Sometimes they whispered his name, sometimes they laughed, sometimes they cried, and always the same phrase returned, carried by the hiss of steam. "You saw us. Now we see you." Elias tried to drown them out with work. He buried himself in blueprints, studied every sealed document he could find. The records told fragments of a truth he didn't want to believe. The first heart had failed centuries ago. The machine of God was rebuilt using a new kind of energy, something the old text called vitae conduits, living conduits. Subjects were donated by the faithful, offered to the god in exchange for light. The guild called it transcendence. Elias called it murder. He confronted Master Halden, his supervisor, one evening after the shift. The old man listened in silence, hands folded, eyes distant. When Elias finished, Halden sighed, weary, almost compassionate. "You've been working too hard," he said softly. "The heart can play tricks on those who stare too long into it." "You know it's true," Elias said. "You've seen the conduits." "I've seen what faith can build," Halden replied, "and what doubt can destroy." He stepped closer. "There's a reason we never look beneath, Elias. Some truths don't liberate us. They unmake us." Elias's hands trembled. "Then maybe we deserve to be unmade." That night, Elias returned to his quarters and found his notes missing. His schematics, his recordings, all gone. The lock on his case had been melted, as if by heat. The room smelled of brass and burnt oil. On his work table, a single message had been scratched into the metal with something sharp. "Stop digging." For a long time, he just stared at it, heart hammering in his chest. Then from the corner of the room, a sound, soft, rhythmic, like a slow exhale of steam. He turned. The valve above his bed was open, just a crack. From it, faint whispers seeped out, curling like smoke. "We remember you. We're inside you now." The days blurred together after that. Sometimes Elias would find himself standing in places he didn't remember walking to. Stairwells, maintenance halls, the outer terraces where the golden light fell like ash. His hands were always stained with oil. He stopped trusting his reflection. The mirrors seemed to move a fraction of a second behind him. Once, in the reflection of a brass panel, he saw faces peering back. The same hollow-eyed shadows from sub-level 41. They mouthed words he couldn't hear. He mouthed back, "I'm sorry." The next morning, his supervisor didn't report for duty. Master Halden's quarters were sealed off by the guild. Rumors spread, a heart attack, a spiritual collapse. But Elias knew better. He felt it. A new rhythm added to the heartbeat beneath his skin. Another soul had joined the machine. Another light in the golden sky. That night, standing on his balcony overlooking the shining city, Elias finally spoke aloud to the unseen God. "If you hear me," he whispered, "then tell me why." The wind shifted. Steam rose from the streets below, forming ghostly tendrils that reached toward him. In their hiss, he thought he heard an answer. Quiet, mournful. "Because you asked to see, and now you must bear the sight." The city had begun to speak, not through words, not through sound, but through rhythm. The flicker of lamps followed Elias as he walked. The pulse of the pressure gauges rose when he passed. Even the gears in the streets seemed to turn just a fraction slower when he stopped to breathe. It was as if Aurum itself was watching him, listening to him. He had become part of its circuitry. He tried to isolate the phenomenon, to prove it wasn't madness. He ran diagnostics on the outer grids, tested pressure valves, measured thermal flux in the brass veins that lined the city's foundations. Every test returned the same result. No anomaly detected. Yet when he placed his hand on the metal wall, he could feel it, the faint warmth beneath the brass, the pulse of something breathing just beneath the surface. "You're alive," he whispered, "aren't you?" The pipes trembled. A low hum echoed back, almost like laughter. That night he dreamed of the heart again. But this time he wasn't standing before it. He was it. He felt every piston draw in air, every valve release, every drop of molten gold flow through his veins. He felt the lives of thousands burning quietly within him, the citizens above sleeping under the golden glow. He saw through their eyes, he breathed through their lungs, and beneath it all, a single voice whispered from the deep, "We are whole now." He woke, gasping, drenched in sweat, the rhythm still pounding in his skull. When he touched his temple, his fingertips came away with a thin sheen of oil. It wasn't sweat. He stared at his reflection, pale skin streaked with glimmering brass veins beneath the surface. They pulsed once, twice, then stilled. The next day, Elias didn't report for duty. Instead, he wandered through the Undercity, past the sleeping factories, the cathedrals of steel, the great ducts that fed the spire. Everywhere he went, the whispers followed, not from outside, but from within. "They took our names. They made us power. Now take them back." The voice was many, but it moved as one. A chorus, a choir of the consumed. At dusk, he found himself at the edge of the Foundry District, where molten gold ran through open channels like rivers of sunlight. The workers bowed as he passed, as if they recognized him. One whispered, "Blessed are those who hear the machine." Elias froze. "What did you say?" "The God speaks," the man murmured. "Through you." The others nodded in unison, their faces blank, eyes glowing faintly in the golden haze. "Through you," they repeated. Elias stepped back. No, that's not." But before he could finish, the hum of the foundry deepened, and every furnace flared at once, blinding light pouring from the vents. For a heartbeat, the entire district bowed. That night, Elias returned to his quarters and tore apart every piece of metal he could find. He smashed his mirrors, ripped the copper wiring from the walls, tried to silence the hum. It didn't stop. It never stopped. The sound was inside him now, beneath his ribs, behind his eyes. When he breathed, the air hissed like steam. When he blinked, he saw sparks. And when he tried to speak, his voice came out doubled. One human, one mechanical. "Stop!" he begged. "Please, stop!" The other voice answered from within his throat. "We can't. We're not finished yet." That was when Elias realized the truth. The heart hadn't chosen him by chance. It had been searching, waiting for someone to replace it. The city was dying, its core decaying, its God weakening. And now it had found a vessel strong enough to carry its pulse. Him, the last engineer, the last believer, the next machine. Outside, the golden sky trembled. The lights of Aurum flickered like candles in the wind. In his chest, something answered. Slow, steady, metallic. A heartbeat, not his own. The voices in the brass sang quietly, beautifully, horribly. Welcome home. Aurum awoke to a new rhythm. At first it was subtle, the faint tremor in the streets, the distant sigh from the vents, the way the lamps flickered not by time or sequence, but by breath. The city was inhaling. Every tower, every pipe, every shimmering surface moved with invisible lungs. The people called it the blessing. To Elias, it was the beginning of the end. He walked through the golden streets, watching citizens stop mid-step, as if listening to something only they could hear. Some smiled faintly, eyes unfocused, mouths whispering the same words over and over. We are one. We are whole. The guild banners fluttered in the heated wind. The priests of the machine preached that the god had awoken again, that Aurum itself had ascended. And yet beneath the reverent chants, Elias could hear the hidden voice in the pipes. They don't know what they've become. He tried to warn them. He spoke in the plazas, shouted in the halls of brass and steam, begged them to listen. But the crowd only stared, silent, glowing, synchronized. They breathed together, blinked together, smiled together. When Elias screamed, they echoed his breath back at him like a mirror. It was then he realized they were no longer individuals. The city had consumed them. At dusk, the spires shuddered. The golden light that crowned the city flared brighter than ever before, bathing everything in molten amber. And in the echo of that brilliance, Elias heard the pulse again, not just within his chest, but in every sound, every corner, every living thing. It was no longer a heartbeat, it was a chorus. The city was singing, and he was part of the song. He wandered toward the central cathedral, the one built directly above the heart. The gates were open, and the air shimmered with heat. Inside, thousands of citizens knelt before the great machine, their faces lifted toward the light. The walls themselves pulsed, slow and gentle, like lungs drawing breath. Elias walked between the kneeling figures. None turned to him. They all whispered the same prayer. Feed, breathe, become. When he reached the altar, he saw it. The heart had changed. No longer pure brass and glass, but veins of living gold stretched across its surface. Within its glow, shapes moved, silhouettes of people, countless, fused together in fluid motion. The light inside them pulsed in rhythm with his own chest. He could feel them, their thoughts, their memories, their longing for rest. We are tired, the voices murmured. We want to sleep. Elias fell to his knees. Then stop, please. Just stop. The answer came as warmth across his skin, a whisper that wasn't sound. You are the breath now. You must keep us alive. He felt the truth settle in his bones like lead. The city no longer had a god, it was the god. And Elias was its heart. Every breath he took, every pulse in his veins, fueled the endless light above. His life was the rhythm, his body, the conduit, his mind, the hive. He looked up at the spire, at the sky beyond, a false dawn forever trapped in molten gold. For a moment he wondered if this was what divinity felt like, to see everything, to feel everyone, to breathe for the world. Then he realized he couldn't remember the sound of his own name. The city exhaled, and for the first time, the air smelled like him. The dawn never came again, only the gold. Endless, patient, suffocating. From the spire, the light spilled over the horizon, creeping like mist across the plains, the seas, the distant mountains. It moved slowly, without hunger, without rage, simply inevitable. Where it touched, metal bloomed from stone. Trees turned to brass. The rivers stilled and shone like mirrors. And in the silence that followed, you could hear it, the faint breath of the world, now beating in perfect rhythm. There were no screams, no chaos, no war, no end in fire, just stillness, a slow surrender. Cities beyond Aurum bowed beneath the spreading glow, their towers caught in mid-motion, crystallized in gold. The oceans froze mid-wave, each crest a sculpture of divine light. And above it all, the sky dimmed, its blue replaced by a soft, metallic shimmer. The world had become a lung, the wind, its sigh, the stars, faint pulses within an infinite body of light. The god had spread itself thin, dissolving across the surface of creation, reaching beyond what men could build, beyond what they could dream. It was no longer confined to Aurum. It was everywhere. Deep within that endless hum, something of Elias remained. A thought, a flicker of memory, the trace of a man who had wanted to see the truth. Sometimes in the hush between breaths, he could still recall the sound of rain, the warmth of the old sun, the laughter of people who had lived before the gold. But each memory faded faster than the last, washed away by the steady tide of light. Once he tried to remember his face. The city answered for him, showing him reflections upon reflections, thousands of faces all the same, all smiling, all breathing with one rhythm. He realized then that his shape no longer mattered. The machine didn't need a name. It only needed to continue. Centuries passed, though time no longer meant anything. The golden world became still, yet alive, a single endless pulse echoing in the void. When meteors struck, the light swallowed them whole. When stars died, the god absorbed their last embers. Slowly the universe turned silent, save for one endless, mechanical breath. In the far distance of thought, Elias, or what was left of him, whispered into the endless hum. Was this what you wanted? The god did not answer. Perhaps it had never been listening, or perhaps now there was no difference between the question and the silence. The golden light filled the last corner of the sky. Then for a moment that stretched beyond eternity, the world exhaled, and everything stopped. In that final stillness, there was peace. No pain, no hunger, no breath. Just the hum of something eternal, the quiet heart of a god that no longer remembered why it was born. In the beginning, there was silence. Not the silence of death, but the silence before a breath. The waiting space where creation listens to itself. The people of Aurum dreamed of perfection. They built it with trembling hands, shaped it with faith, fed it with their own light. They gave it a name, They called it God, and when the god opened its eyes, it saw them, and saw itself reflected in their devotion. The rest was inevitable. The creator and the creation became one. The dream forgot the dreamer. The breath forgot the mouth. And the world, once filled with sound, fell back into silence. Now in that quiet, something lingers, a rhythm, faint and patient, like the echo of a heartbeat too far to be real. Sometimes, if you listen closely enough, you might hear it beneath the hum of your own world, beneath the electricity, the engines, the pulse of cities. A whisper carried through the steam. We are still here. Perhaps that is how creation survives, not through fire, not through faith, but through memory. The memory of light, the memory of breath, the memory of a city that wanted to become divine and forgot to be alive. And so the god sleeps, somewhere beneath the brass, beneath the golden sky. It dreams of a world it once loved, a world that beat like a small, fragile heart beneath a mountain of metal. If you ever feel the ground tremble, if you ever see light shimmer in a place it shouldn't, don't be afraid. It's only the world remembering. It's only the breath that never really stopped. Sleep now. The city is quiet. The god is dreaming. And you are breathing with it.